Hello there. Boris Johnson has started his move to take back control of certain constitutional matters from the UK Supreme Court. Firstly, please subscribe and like this video to give my channel a boost. And I'm always uploading new content, so please do check back daily. And a big thanks to my Patreon and PayPal supporters. Now, do you remember that day? The day when the then top Supreme Court judge, Lady Hale, wearing that infamous spider brooch, gave out the court's ruling that the Prime Minister Boris Johnson had acted unlawfully in proroguing Parliament for a month. All at the end of a case that had Gina Miller and the former Tory Prime Minister John the Grey Major strutting around the place saying that Parliament must be allowed to do its job. A bit hypocritical of Major, considering the political manner with which he himself used prorogation during his time as Prime Minister. And all the while, pro-EU MPs theatrically queued up to get into Westminster or managed to get inside and sit in the empty chamber, and John Bercow, the Speaker at the time, wailing about how unconstitutional it all was. Remember? Then when the court had forced the doors of Westminster open and all the MPs had filed back in, nothing happened. No hugely significant historic event unfolded, just the same sad old rabble being paid salary and expenses. And do you remember the absolutely deadlocked Parliament that ensued, where nothing got done? And when it became obvious that we needed a general election, the oxygen thieves on the green benches hung on with a tenacity that belied their otherwise general uselessness. And all that happened just 12 to 15 months ago. But due to the pandemic, it seems a lot longer ago than that, doesn't it? And all on top of the courts interfering with the royal prerogative to trigger Article 50, although in that case it ended up more helping than hindering Brexit. Anyway, as a result of this sorry episode, Boris Johnson pledged in the Tory manifesto for the December 2019 general election to look at the way law was being misused and misinterpreted by those in high judicial office so that they could play politics. And yesterday, the government published the Fixed Term Parliaments Act 2011 repeal bill. And this bill is intended to put the constitutional position of prorogation and dissolution back to pre-Tory Lib Dem coalition days. As the foreword to the bill says, the Fixed Term Parliaments Act 2011 was a departure from the long-term constitutional norm, whereby the Prime Minister could seek an early dissolution of Parliament. It was passed with limited scrutiny and created parliamentary paralysis at a critical time for our country. The overriding principle of our Constitution should be that the government of the day has the confidence of the House of Commons. The Act's codification of confidence motions and its regime of fixed five-year parliaments undermines this democratic necessity, both hindering the function of representative democracy by making it harder to have necessary elections. As I've already outlined, that was absolutely the case. And the foreword also says, the 2011 Act was passed by the coalition in unique circumstances and since 2015 has not had its intended effect. Neither the 2015 Parliament nor the 2017 Parliament lasted for a full 5-year term. The fact that Parliament had to introduce bespoke primary legislation in 2019 to allow for an early general election shows that the 2011 Act has not worked efficiently or effectively. Flexibility is an essential part of the parliamentary system. The 2011 Act also created uncertainty as to what happens when a no-confidence vote is passed under the Act and how it might operate in practice. The government committed in its manifesto to repealing the 2011 Act and putting in place arrangements that deliver the legal, constitutional and political certainty around the process for dissolving Parliament. Now, one of the things about the old system prior to the 2011 Act was that prorogation and dissolution of Parliament were judgment calls by the elected government, not something for the well-heeled to use the courts for. So the foreword goes on to explain that the draft Fixed-Term Parliaments Act 2011 repeal bill delivers on this commitment. In doing so, the bill makes express provision to revive the prerogative power to dissolve Parliament. This means once more Parliament will be dissolved by the Sovereign on the advice of the Prime Minister. This will enable governments within the life of a Parliament to call a general election at the time of their choosing. The long-standing position is that dissolution is not reviewable by the courts, and judgment on the government's actions in such matters should be left to the electorate at the polling booth or, in extremely exceptional circumstances, to the Sovereign. In light of this, to ensure maximum certainty on the timing of a parliamentary election, the bill contains an ouster clause to make clear that the exercise of the prerogative powers to dissolve Parliament and the extent of those powers is non-justiciable. And to ensure this new bill gets better scrutiny than the 2011 Act got, the government is putting it through extra committee scrutiny. And it also says, the bill also contains provision to fix the maximum length of a parliament at 5 years, thereby returning to the position prior to the 2011 Act. Now, under the UK Constitution, the movement in powers always goes from the monarch to Parliament. It must be one way, from Buckingham Palace to the Palace of Westminster, from royalty to the people. So the erosion of the royal prerogative occurs as required over time until no power at all vests in the reigning monarch. As the House of Commons Library explains, while the prerogative can be abolished or abrogated by statute, it can never be broadened. So Boris would need to replicate the old prerogative powers in primary statute law, because repealing the 2011 Act cannot revive the royal prerogative. That has now disappeared forever. On this, the House of Commons Library says, however, Parliament could create powers by statute that are similar to prerogative powers in their nature. But the bill itself says it will make provision to repeal the Fixed-Term Parliaments Act 2011, to revive the prerogative powers to dissolve Parliament and to call a new Parliament, and for connected purposes. And also that the powers relating to the dissolution of Parliament and the calling of a new Parliament that were exercisable by virtue of Her Majesty's prerogative immediately before the commencement of the Fixed-Term Parliaments Act 2011 are exercisable again, as if the Fixed-Term Parliament Act 2011 had never been enacted. But as the House of Commons Library says, the Fixed-Term Parliaments Act 2011 abolished the former prerogative power to dissolve Parliament. These moves that put prerogative powers on a statutory footing are usually considered to permanently abridge prerogative power. So, under the Constitution, does Parliament have the power to pass such an act? But Parliament is sovereign, is it not, and can pass any law it pleases. But how democratic is it to pass powers back to the monarchy from Parliament, however well-intentioned? Now, all bills have to make a statement on whether it complies with the European Convention on Human Rights, which has a view on democracy and free and fair elections for a country's legislature. Now, it usually suffices for there to be a quick paragraph saying that in the government's view, this bill is in line with the ECHR. But for this new bill, the Cabinet Office Minister, Michael Gove, who is bringing the bill forward, goes to great lengths to explain why this bill is democratic. One thinks he may be trying to head off constitutional challenges, maybe even through the courts, during the lead-up to royal assent. An interesting conundrum, because if the power to reinstate a UK monarch's powers, however small, is accepted, Does it then mean that a royalist-minded Parliament could restore all power to the royal family, however inconceivable that might sound? Anyway, if you want to hear more from me, please don't forget to subscribe and also press that little bell, or you won't get any notifications. And if you want to see more of me, buy a mug with my mug on it by following the link in the descriptions box below, and support me on Patreon or PayPal. So what do you think about all of this? Please share and comment, and thank you for watching.